In the summer of 2020, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout released worldwide to critical acclaim. The game was an innovative take on the already oversaturated Battle Royale experience, in that, instead of eliminating your opponents through the conventional method of, well, you know, game-ending them, you instead defeated them through a combination of completing races, winning challenges, and finishing objectives. Fall Guys initially started life in 2018 as a clone of the infamous Japanese game show Takeshi's Castle, but the team behind it, Mediatonic, quickly expanded its premise into a gigantic player-versus-player experience set with a multitude of its own mechanics, such as 60-player lobbies, complex character customization, its own unique obstacles and minigames, and of course, full physics, hence the name. Fall Guys would only spend a single year in development before officially being revealed at E3 2019 during the Devolver panel. Alongside the announcement also came a cinematic trailer, a release window of 2020, as well as the two systems the game would be exclusive to, the PlayStation 4 and PC. And just like the announcement said, after only 2 years in development, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout would release worldwide on August 4th, 2020. And to say its launch was a success would be an understatement. Within only 24 hours of its release, the game had amassed an astonishing 1.5 million concurrent players, spanning across only 2 systems, as well as achieving 520,000 hours of concurrent watch time on Twitch. Fall Guys had quite literally exceeded everyone's expectations, including the developers. The insane influx of players caused the game's servers to completely overload, meaning that tons of people, despite owning the game, were unable to actually log in and play it on the day it launched. This issue of overcrowding got so bad that the game's servers on the PlayStation had to be temporarily taken offline in an attempt to remedy the strain that was being placed upon them. But this slight hiccup in the weeks following its release didn't really hinder the game too much, seeing as only 1 month after its launch, Fall Guys reached the insane milestone of 10 million copies sold just on Steam alone, as well as taking the record for the most downloaded PlayStation Plus title in history, an achievement that it still holds to this day. It's fair to say that people were enamoured with the game. Its vibrant world, chaotic gameplay, and its wacky design entertained millions for hours on end. So surely, with the seemingly perfect formula that the game had crafted, nothing could go wrong. As the months went by, Fall Guys had 3 major issues that people began to take notice of: countless game-breaking glitches, an epidemic of hackers, and perhaps most importantly, an overall lack of content. See, Fall Guys released with only 25 maps, which sounds like a lot on paper, but when you factor in that those 25 maps would be split between 5 different rounds, and the fact that the average length of a single match was only 10 minutes, meant that people were forced to replay the same maps over and over again, leaving the game feeling repetitive and stale for the vast majority of people who played. And unlike the other 2 issues, this was something that the developers really didn't know how to rectify. Contrary to other games in the live service genre, Mediatonic never actually created a roadmap of content for post-launch. They attempted to counter this lack of content by adding random obstacles to the pre-existing maps, which for a time did help to keep Fall Guys fresh, but eventually, the rapidly growing player base that the game had built up began to decline. Month after month, more and more people grew tired of the game, and even when updates eventually started to drop, the player count continued to dwindle, though that's probably due to the negative reception that said updates received from the few players who remained. But there was a glimmer of hope for Fall Guys back in March 2021, when Epic, the creators and publishers of Fortnite, announced that they were purchasing the game. And to give Epic credit, following their acquisition, they did a pretty good job in reverting the decline of players. They not only finally ported Fall Guys over to the Xbox and Nintendo Switch, but also made it completely free to play, which boosted the game to a staggering 50 million players over the span of a 2-week period. But the hope that the game would be returning back to its former glory quickly died off as the first few updates under Epic dropped. Despite the initial good reception that Epic brought back to the game, they began making the same mistakes that the former publishers had almost immediately, that being mediocre updates, insanely long gaps in between seasons, boring and repetitive minigames, and most egregiously, the vaulting of fan favourite maps, and this once again resulted in a drastic decline of players. But around the time of Fall Guys' second fall-off, another party battle royale game began to emerge. This is Stumble Guys, a mobile battle royale game created by a Finnish studio known as KitKat. Stumbleguys released on the 24th of September 2020, just 52 days after Fall Guys, and as you can probably tell, it initially started off as nothing more than just a cheap knockoff, with it not only copying the look of Fall Guys, but also its premise, its levels, and even its obstacles. However, Stumbleguys had one major advantage over Fall Guys: the mobile market. In 2020 alone, the PC and console markets had a total combined revenue of around $52.8 billion, yet mobile gaming, by itself, generated an astounding $73.8 billion and accumulated a user base of around 2.5 billion people. See, what makes mobile gaming so profitable in comparison to its competitors isn't just its insanely high player base, but also microtransactions. And yes, I know, basically every game released now on console or PC has microtransactions to some degree, but nowhere near to the extent of mobile. And this was something that Stumbleguys took full advantage of. See, Stumbleguys quite literally sold it all. Skins, emotes, season passes, loot boxes. They even nullified the issue of hackers and cheaters by putting game-breaking advantages, such as the ability to attack and defend yourself, behind a paywall. But unlike most developers that create a knockoff game for the sole purpose of an easy cash grab before they eventually abandon it, Kitco actually continued to update the game. They added a lot of the basic things that you would expect, such as skins, emotes, and other cosmetics, but also a ton of other things, like a bunch of its own original maps, new obstacles, massive in-game events, and even tournaments. And they were producing these large updates on an extremely frequent basis, with there usually only being a 2 to 3 week waiting period in between patches, which, in contrast to Fall Guys, a game that has gone up to 6 months without any additional updates being added, is quite astounding. In fact, Stumbleguys started coming out with so many impactful updates in such a short period of time that the game managed to divert its original image of just being another Fall Guys knockoff into being a genuine Fall Guys competitor. And things only got better for the game when on the 8th of September 2022, similar to their biggest rival, Stumbleguys was acquired by a much larger company that possessed much greater resources than themselves. Though this time, instead of it being by an already well-established corporate conglomerate like Epic, it was by a much smaller company that specialised in the mobile market, called Scopely. Scopely immediately got to work in expanding Stumbleguys after their acquisition. They did a lot of things that you would expect, such as allocating resources to the game, as well as assisting the developers in broadening their visions of the future updates. But their main priority wasn't really improving the game as a whole, but instead, improving its marketing. Scopely went on a spree of securing sponsorships for Stumbleguys, with them managing to negotiate major collaborations with popular IPs like Hot Wheels, Nerf, Looney Tunes, SpongeBob, My Hero Academia. They even managed to collaborate with MrBeast twice, sponsoring a bunch of his videos, as well as having an entire season dedicated around him. There's even talks of another MrBeast collab being in the works, though it's questionable if that will ever happen, due to, reasons. And this increase in advertising pushed the game, which at the time was only really known between a small percentage of mobile users, into the mainstream. The game that originally started off as a knockoff was now being searched up more than the original, and Scopely acted upon this major boost of popularity by making Stumbleguys more accessible for anyone to play. They not only made the decision to port the game over to Steam, but also the Xbox, the PlayStation, the Nintendo Switch. You can even play the game on a web browser if you really want to. As it stands today, Stumbleguys has been downloaded over 700 million times, with a consistent monthly player base of over 50 million people. So, while Fall Guys' player count continues to decline, Stumbleguys only continues to grow bigger and bigger, making a game that once started off as just another copycat more popular than the original.